Hello, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are enjoying this beautiful day in the city of Indianapolis. My name is Ebony Chappelle, and I am Director of Programs and Communication for Leadership Indianapolis. So excited to be here with you today for another episode of our series, The Convo, where we connect with local leaders and learn about the work that they're doing as well as the leadership lessons that have inspired them and guided them along their own journey in leadership. Today, I am very excited. We're going to be talking with Brandi Davis-Handy. Brandi does so many amazing things in the city, so we're going to hear from her in just a little bit. I want to remind you guys that AES is the sponsor of Get On Board Month. June is Get On Board Month at Leadership Indianapolis. And last week we had a really great workshop facilitated by Beth Purdue Atland, who's Vice President at Leadership Indianapolis, where we got to learn about our why. When you're active and you're busy in the community and you're doing things and staying engaged, it's so important to remember what inspired you to start in the first place so that you can reflect on that, especially when things get tough. So it was such a great workshop. We have another workshop coming up tomorrow, which is called Board Basics, which will give you all of the information that you need to know when you're first joining a board, or if you've been away from board service for some time and you want to just get a refresher. So you can find out more information about that at leadershipindianapolis.com and click on the upcoming events tab. So I want to tell you guys a little bit about our guest today, Brandi Davis-Handy, who leads public relations efforts at AES Indiana. So excited to hear from her. So I'm going to read a little bit about her background before we get started. So excuse me. Technology is just so great sometimes when it actually works for us, not when it gets in the way of what it is that we're trying to do. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and bring Brandi on screen so that we do not waste any more time from our actual conversation today. So Brandi, it's so good to see you. How are you doing today?
Oh, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for inviting me on. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do with public relations at AES.
Yeah, and maybe so I know that we had kind of the technical challenges, so I can give kind of a brief overview bio and kind of my background. I've spent almost 7 years of my career working with AES Indiana, and so I currently serve as the Chief Public Relations Officer for AES's US Utilities, which includes AES Indiana and AES Ohio. So overseeing both the communications and the community relations teams. I've been in PR for truly most of my 20 something plus, not to age myself, career. And so I've worked in a number of sectors, including energy, transportation. I've worked for a number of not-for-profits, the 500 Festival, the American Cancer Society, but actually started out as a broadcast journalism. So my degree was
Which
in
I thought was
journalism.
so cool that that's
Yeah.
where you got your start. So it's really interesting to see how your career has just progressed since then.
Yeah, I mean, I've always told people that at the heart, I think of who I am as a storyteller. And so, grew up hoping, wanting to be the next Oprah Winfrey. And then, like many reporters, when you get out there and started in a smaller market. So, my first reporting job was in Wilmington, North Carolina. And I was like, God, this wasn't like the Oprah experience that I thought it was going to be. But
Yeah.
it was awesome. And I had the opportunity to work for some really great stations, but also realized, I think, during kind of the first 6 years of my career, that there was another way to tell stories, which made me, kind of translate that over to the public relations space. And really happy that I made that transition when I did.
Excellent. So, in making that transition, you've worked in a lot of different places. Now you're at AES leading efforts. And one of the things that I love the most about the work it is that you do is leveraging the resources that are available through such a corporation to help build community initiatives. Talk to us a little bit about the work that AES does in the community.
Yeah, investing in the community is a big part of who we are at AES Indiana. So, just recently we released our 2021 community report, which really details all of the ways that we invested and gave back in Central Indiana last year. And part of that contribution was more than $2 million. And so, one of the things that I have always loved, and I always tell people about, working at AES Indiana, aside from the very important need of what we produce and empowering the city, is the fact that we've got so many people who are so invested in this community and absolutely want to make it a better place. So whether they're serving on boards, serving on committees, it is never hard to get someone inside of AES Indiana to raise their hand when there's something that we want to do out in the community.
Yeah, that's such a lovely thing, being able to have those hand raisers right there as part of the team, because you guys do some amazing, amazing work in the arts and culture space, working with organizations like Gang Gang, which you're the board president of. A lot of the work environmentally, helping with planting and different things like that. So there's always so much going on. So one of the things, and you and I talked a little bit before we hopped on live about how the transition has been over the past few years coming out of the pandemic, somewhat, because we still know it's a very real thing that people are being impacted by, but starting to realize what our new normal looks like. And one of the things that you mentioned is that this time has changed the way that we view the role that we play in the community as individuals. So I want you to talk a little bit more about what that looks like for you and some of the things that you've witnessed as well out in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when you think of the last 2 to 3 years, I don't know, sometimes it feels like 20 years that we're on, we've been through a lot as a community. So whether it is the pandemic, civil unrest, violence, you think of some of the mass shootings that we've seen across the United States, the changes in how we work, inflation. I mean, it's literally all of the things. It feels like all of those things continue to compound. And I know for me personally, I've absolutely kind of taken a step back and really thought about, the role that I play in terms of wanting to kind of, I think first kind of get our communities back to where they were pre COVID-19, but also what does the future look like? And so I think that I think everyone right now is kind of in this growth mindset of what are the ways that we can best, invest and support our communities to make it the place that we need it to be for the future. And so, for me, I think it's looked, I've kind of looked at that in terms of first, how I spend my time in terms of the boards that I'm serving on. And so, when I think back to like 2020, when our communities were going through so much, and, if you guys were like me, you were, everyone was thinking like, what can I do? Like, what can I do to help, our community get through this situation? And so the first thing that I looked at was, where are the spaces and places where I'm showing up? And so the boards that I'm participating in, are we, and really going back to even our mission statement, like, are we having the impact that we want to have? Could we be doing this differently? And so I've really done some soul searching the last 2 years of, where do I want to best, where do I think that we truly need the best outcomes for our community in this time? And then how am I showing up as a volunteer, as a board member? And then I think that when you find yourself in any sort of place of community leadership and you have the opportunity for your voice to truly be heard, you also have to challenge and really push those around you to make sure that we're consistently looking at, at the right things. And, I'll even use, a current example. I serve as board president of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Central Indiana. And it, for the last year, we're going through a new strategic plan exercise right now. But we've had a lot of conversations as a board around, there's a huge need for mentors. And so as we think of the fact that there's 1,400 children in our community who are on a wait list waiting for a mentor, what can we do differently as an organization, as a board of directors, to ensure that we're engaging the right people? And sometimes that even starts with looking at the makeup of your board. And so, does your board look like those that you're serving? Do you have, and then who are you inviting to your board? And so, like, I might, kind of wear the hat of kind of the corporate the corporate sponsor, the person sitting in the corporation, but not all board members have to look like me. And so
Hmm.
ensuring that, are you leaving a place on your board for those that you're actually serving? Because that's the most important voice. I think when you think of the changes and the growth and where we need to go, the word we is really essential because we have to do it together. And sometimes in order to get to that right solution, you have to make sure that you're hearing the voices of those that are really going to be impacted ultimately by this work. And I think that as we kind of sit back and look at kind of where we're headed, I see great things happening in Indy. Like I absolutely think that
Hmm.
we are engaging in the right ways. When you look at, you mentioned Gang Gang. I think that they've been doing some outstanding work here just initially in their first year of
Yeah, it's
existence.
incredible to see. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know I kept going on and on. I'll pause because you probably want to ask me something else. I can talk
No,
about that
yeah.
forever.
Yeah, but you shared some really great things, and these are the type of conversations that we've been having a lot through our programming at Leadership Indianapolis. But I wanted to ask you, when it comes to navigating those challenges, either internally where you're trying to figure out what is the best use of my energy, where can I best be of service in the community, when you're trying to navigate those challenges, or even navigating the challenges of being on the board and challenging others around you to think outside of the box in terms of what the mission and vision is. What are your pieces of advice for navigating those types of challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with making sure that what you're doing, where you're spending that time, where you're volunteering, that it is an organization and a mission that is close to your heart. And so, I think that that's really key because I think people get involved in community work and organizations and boards for a number of reasons, but you have to
Hmm.
absolutely believe in that mission and care about that outcome. And I feel that that fuels you in a different way. And so, I mean, there are times where when I look at, my day job, when I look at commitments I have with my family, and then you kind of see these list of meetings and other things that are happening, or in that moment you feel exhausted, but I'm going to
Yep.
keep going because that organization is so important to me. And those are the things that, you have to first make sure that you truly, truly connect with the mission of that organization.
Hmm.
And that I think that's just key. That's key to it all. Because if that exists, then you're going to make it work because it's the core of everything that you do and you're going to make the time for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, when you're looking at that hit home to me, looking at the calendar and seeing all the different, obligations and responsibilities, making sure that you're using that time wisely because we only have, so many hours in a day, each of us. So being sure that we're using those to the max capacity makes a lot of sense.
And I
So yeah.
recently, I recently had a conversation with someone where, I mean, we had a similar conversation around kind of, where we're spending time in terms of our boards and commitments. And this person that I talked to kind of had an aha of saying, and it goes back to the conversation that I had of board makeup and also making sure that you've got the right voices around the table at that board.
Mhm.
And this person, was saying like they kind of looked at that and said we don't, and had challenged the board itself of we really need to think about who we are opening the doors to make sure that we're capturing those voices. And so he left his board position to ensure that it opened up another seat. And that was an organization that was really important to him. But what was more important was the outcome of the work that they're doing and making
Mhm.
sure that they were really getting to where they needed to go. And he knew that part of that solution meant that there were others that needed a seat at that table, so he took himself away from that table. And so I think that those are
Wow.
important things. I've served on a number of boards, and sometimes you also have to say, maybe it's time for me to step away, because if I've had a
Mhm.
voice at this table for 5, 6, 7 years, I've contributed a lot, but sometimes you need to make sure that you're personally leaving room for new voices. That's
Mhm.
really important as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, you really, really hit the nail on the head there. So, in keeping with that theme around board service, I love what you mentioned about that person that left their position to make space for someone else, because you and I know how impactful that can be to a person's growth to have that type of opportunity. So, I want to have you speak a little bit more around why it's so important for more people to have an opportunity to be in these positions and sit at these tables?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's kind of, the core benefit of, I mean, our organizations, especially right now, coming, I keep saying coming out of this pandemic because I hope we are coming out of this pandemic.
You and me
But
both.
organizations themselves are stretched for resources. So I think, that's number one benefit of having a board of directors or a committee is that you can bring in those diverse, lenses from across your community to help support, the mission of the organization. I think those who might be thinking about, is this, do I want to do more? There are absolute benefits from just an overall professional development standpoint. Like I can think of a development plan that I put together for myself probably 15 years ago. And as I thought about like my career and where I wanted to go, I looked at, the work that I was doing in the community as a big piece of that, because, depending on the role that you're sitting in, you may only get so many opportunities. Like I'm a communicator. So, within my day job, I'm focused on communications, those sorts of things. When I'm, working with a board or a committee, I have the opportunity to raise my hand and say, hey, like I want to be a part of the finance committee, or, I want to be on the governance committee. And it's those leadership opportunities that can absolutely translate in the future to help growing your career in ways that you never anticipated. So, I think that for those who are looking at it, I mean, I think sometimes people look at it in the wrong way of saying, hey, like, I don't have time to do this. I want to do this, but I've got so many things happening at work. Like, look at this as an extension. Like if you are connected to an organization that's meaningful for you and you're doing it for the right reasons, and you have the opportunity, to grow your skill set in other ways, that's a complete win-win. And so I think people need to make sure that they're looking at it in that way as well.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. And it makes me think of a personal example that I witnessed recently where someone was able to use the skills that they developed through board service to positively impact their family and their immediate community. So there's a friend of mine who serves as president of this community board that just started, and they've learned a lot. And they took something so simple as being able to create an agenda for a
Oh, yeah.
meeting, how to manage committees of people. And they applied that to their family reunion recently. So it's just amazing to see how these things not only feed, other organizations and help build them up and promote that community work in that way, but then we can also take it, to our immediate personal spheres of influence and be able to make positive impact there as well. So I just think that's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Brandi, it's been so good talking with you. As we wrap up, this is one of my favorite questions to ask our guests, and that is to have them reflect on leadership lessons that have helped guide them on their own personal leadership journey. So, what is that for you?
Oh, I mean, I think that I find lessons in the work that I do every day with those organizations I'm working with. I would say I probably boil it down to a quote, and those who've ever heard me talk, I feel like I quote this all the time, but it's Angela Davis, and she said, I'm no longer accepting the things that I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept. And so, I started off our conversation by kind of going through the list of all of the things happening right now in the world, in our community. And so if you're sitting there and you're watching the news and you're feeling frustrated and how can I be a part of the solution? It's like, get out there and be a part of the solution. And so the reality is that there's not one person in this community that can solve these problems for us. It's about the collective and how we come together and really rally around what we want the future of our community to look like. And so I think that we all can be a part of that change. And there's so many ways right now here in Indy to do that. And I know we're leaving, so I just want to plug, because I know Get On
Please
Board
do.
is coming around the corner, which is
Yes.
sponsored by AES Indiana. And so for those of you that might be considering, joining a board, it's, joining, whether it's a board or a committee, and really looking for the right organization, there will be dozens of organizations at Newfields on June 28th. And I know that there's a lot of information out there online, but I would just plug that opportunity for Get On Board 2022 as a way that you can truly get plugged in and have some really great intentional conversations with organizations that are looking for volunteers.
Absolutely. So, Brandi, you said it best. It's all those years of experience making you so suited to do this work. But thank you again. And I look forward to seeing you very, very soon.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Likewise. Bye bye. All right. Thank you again to Brandi Davis-Handy of AES for being our guest today on the Convo. You can find out more about the work AES is doing by visiting aes.com/community to learn about the work that they are doing here in the city of Indianapolis. Also, want to plug one more time, get on board. We have another one of our virtual workshops happening tomorrow from noon to 1, so you can join us over the lunch hour, and that is our board basics workshop. So you can find out more information and you can register at the link on our website. If you have any questions or concerns about it, you can reach out to Beth Purdue Outland, and her contact info is on our website as well. Brandi mentioned it, but on June 28th, we are going to be at Newfields starting at 4:30 p.m. for the Get On Board in-person event. This is our first time being in person in 2 years, so it's going to be really, really exciting. When you register for that event, and registration is free, but it's required. When you register for that event, you can also come to visit Newfields and walk around the museum and enjoy the grounds starting at 3 o'clock p.m. prior to Get On Board starting. So again, thank you all so much for tuning in. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.